So again, welcome. You have the possibility to write in the chat whenever you want to ask me, and if you need anything after the session, just send us an email. I will try to reply as soon as possible. And yeah, let's go directly to the target. This course is a Dynamo course, is a basic Dynamo course. So I will cover more or less whatever is in the interface of Dynamo, what kind of Dynamo we have, what we can do with Dynamo. And I will try to cover more or less three kind of things during this course. The first one will be, of course, a brief introduction of Dynamo and the interface of Dynamo. Then we will go through the geometries and how we can manage geometries inside Dynamo. And after that, we will move to something more related to data management in Dynamo and how this can be, how we can gather data from Revit using Dynamo and then use Excel to export and import information from Dynamo. And last but not least, we will try to start some simple automation with a very brief introduction on how to use Python and how what is the next level of the automation using Dynamo. So first of all, we are going to use Revit 2018 for this course. But everything I'm saying, whatever I'm saying during this course is it's more or less the same for previous versions of Dynamo and Revit. And right now, the latest version, the latest stable version of Dynamo is the 1.3.2. So how you can download Dynamo? You can go on the website, which is dynamobim.org, dynamobim.org. And on the first page, you have the download button, which is this one. And in the download page, you have all the latest release of Dynamo. So as you can see, we have two versions of Dynamo. The first one is Dynamo, which is a plugin for Revit and is the one on the left side. And the other one is Dynamo Studio, which is a standalone version of Dynamo, which is able to do many other things that Dynamo for Revit is not able to do, like, for example, create some workflows that can be used on the web or can be used into other platforms like Fractal for generative design and so on. But you can use always the same workflow that you built on Dynamo for Revit and then use it into Dynamo Studio. You have some more functionalities, for example, in Dynamo Studio to manage DWG file, and so you have the ability to open DWG file and use elements from a DWG file and then re-export into a DWG file, as long as you have, of course, AutoCAD installed in your machine. So as I said, we have the latest stable version of Dynamo is 1.3.2, and it can be installed into 2016 and 2017 and 2018. It's not possible to install the 1.3.2 in Revit in previous version like 2015 or 14 and so on. But if you need to install Dynamo in previous versions of Revit, or just if you want to use some old script that you built or someone built for you, you can always go to other releases. So you have some pre-release daily builds. As you can see, is Dynamo Revit 2.0, which is kind of a beta version of the new release of Dynamo, which is coming probably in a few weeks. But if you need another stable release, because I'm always saying, please don't use any kind of pre-release during the production stage, because anyway, Dynamo is still something in work in progress every day. So even the stable release are not very stable as far as I can see from a day-by-day usage of Dynamo. So if you want to use a pre-release, it's on your own risk, because this will be definitely unstable. But if you want a previous stable release, you can go to this view all builds, and in this page you will find all the previous versions of Dynamo based on the most stable release, so 1.32, 1, 3.0, 2.1, and so on, and the daily release. So if you want to use Dynamo in 2015, for example, in Revit 2015, you have to use the 1.2.1 release. So this will install in 2015 of Revit. And if you want to use Dynamo in Revit 2014, you have to use the 0.8.2 release, which is the latest one that is able to install on Revit 2014. But anyway, this course will be based on Revit 2018, and the most stable release 1.3.1.2, which is already installed in my machine. So let's start to understand what is Dynamo actually. So Dynamo is, first of all, a plugin of Revit. So Dynamo is something that is working on top of Revit and is using the API, so the core engine of Revit. So whatever you can do with Revit, you can do with Dynamo. But whatever you can't do in Revit, you can't do in Dynamo. So this is the first rule when you start to use a plugin in Revit. There's nothing that you can do that you can't do in the interface of Revit. So every time you click or you use a node in Dynamo, there is some code behind that is acting on the engine of Revit and is doing something for you. So don't think that you can do miracles with Dynamo. You can do many things, you can automate many things, but always something that you are able to do in a basic version of Revit with out-of-the-box tools. So with this in mind, we can start to understand that there are two versions of Dynamo installed in your computer right now. There is one which is working directly inside Revit, and there is a standalone version which is quite different from the Dynamo Studio, which is installed in your machine as well, and is called Dynamo Sandbox. So where is located this Dynamo Sandbox is in your machine, is under the C drive, so where all the software are installed, is under Program Files, under Dynamo folder, Dynamo Revit, and the Dynamo version that you are using. I have also the 2.0 in my in my machine because I'm testing the newer version, because I'm writing some package for the newer version. But for you will see here all the installation of Dynamo according to the revision that you have installed. So let's say we want to see the 1.3, and inside this folder, so Windows, Program Files, Dynamo, Dynamo Revit, and 1.3, which is the version, you can see this Dynamo Sandbox. Now, what I'm always doing is to right-click on this application, and I'm dragging this application directly into the taskbar, so I can always use this application just clicking on the icon in my taskbar. So what is the difference between the Dynamo inside Revit and the Dynamo outside Revit? So the basic difference is that you are not able to deal with Revit elements if you use the Dynamo Sandbox. So we can use Dynamo Sandbox only to create geometries. So like we can manage curves, surfaces, solids, and whatever is just a geometry, which is not a Dynamo element, a Revit element. We can also deal with Excel files, for example, exporting coordinates or importing coordinates or whatever is related to something that is not a Revit element. So if you want to deal with elements in a Revit project, you have always to use the Dynamo version that is installed inside Revit, because there is kind of connection between Revit and Dynamo installed in as a plugin. But if you want just to test some script regarding shape modeling, or just import export of elements, or just mathematical operation, you can do that with Dynamo Sandbox. And I'm sometimes using Dynamo Sandbox just to scratch some basic node. But if you need to, for example, query properties of Revit or query properties of elements in Revit, you have to use the Dynamo inside installed as a plugin. So since 2 versions, so starting from 2017.1 of Revit, the Dynamo is installing not under add-ins, but under Manage tab. So if you have a previous version of Revit, like the 2016, you will still find Dynamo under the add-ins tab. But if you have 2017.1 or or up, you can find it under the Manage. So don't scare if you can't see the icon under the add-ins. And starting from the 2017.1 as well, we have this new Dynamo player installed with together with Revit, which is like a music player, but is playing not the music, is playing Dynamo workflows. So you can build Dynamo scripts, and then you can just hit the button of play to run a workflow without opening Dynamo for Revit. We will see this later once we have some basic script that we can use. So, but for now, we will focus only on the Dynamo installed together with Revit. There is a bad news with the Dynamo installed with Revit, and the bad news is that if you crash with Dynamo, you crash with Revit. So if something happened to Dynamo, you have to close both Dynamo and Revit, because again, Dynamo is on top of Revit, so it's using the engine of Revit. So if you crash with Dynamo, you have to close both Revit and Dynamo. You can't close only Dynamo without closing Revit if you have a problem. The second bad news is that every time you open a Dynamo session, that session is binded to the project that you are using at that moment. That means if I have a project open and I open Dynamo, this Dynamo will work only inside this project. So if I have a simple workflow of Dynamo, and I want to use the same workflow, for example, in another project, let's say a brand new project, and I have 2 projects now opened in my session, then you will see that Dynamo is not pointing at the current document. So you will not be able to use Dynamo in another project unless you close Dynamo, you change the project, and you open again Dynamo. So at this time, Dynamo will point to the new project. And then again, if I'm going to change the project, I will get again the same issue. So every time you want to use a Dynamo script into a new project, even if you are not opening a new session of Revit, but you are just opening a new project, you have to close Dynamo and open again Dynamo. And that's why after a while we ask to have the Dynamo player, because the Dynamo player is not taking into consideration the project you are using at that time. So if you change the project and you run again the script from the Dynamo player, then the Dynamo player will take care of changing the project where Dynamo is pointing at that time. So that's why we had this opportunity to, to ask for like a Dynamo player, because that is really annoying that you have to open and close every time Dynamo if you are going to change the project. But for now, remember this. This is a rule, because every time you want to use Dynamo on a project, you have to close Dynamo and open it. So please keep in mind to save as many time you can during your process, because if Dynamo is going to crash or if you need to change the project, you have to close Dynamo, and then you can lose your workflow. So that's the first rule. Let me close the second project. We don't need it. Okay. So with these basic rules, I don't have any other bad news. Don't worry. With these rules in mind, we can start to understand the interface of Dynamo. So first of all, Dynamo is connected to the project, as I said. So it's really important that you keep in mind the project unit that you are using, because Dynamo will use and will understand the numbers, especially if you use numbers to write information about length based on the unit of the project. So if you want to say 2 right now, and you want to use this number to place a distance between points, for example, this 2 right now is for Dynamo is a unitless number, but when Dynamo is using this number for the project, will be 2 millimeters. So just be sure that you use the right unit when you write some number here. There are some conversion nodes that we will see later. Don't worry right now about the nodes that I'm using, but there are nodes to convert numbers between units. I'm not using that much this kind of nodes. I'm just trying always to use the right number without any conversion. So if I want 2 meters, I will just write 2000. Or if I want to use 2 instead of 2000, I will just change my unit before starting my project, Dynamo workflow. So the good news is that you can change during the process the unit of the project, and then you can change your numbers later. So don't worry about that. It's not like the session of Dynamo that you have to close it and reopen it. Just if you need to change the project units, just do it, and then remember to change the unit of the numbers in Dynamo. So that's the first good news. So as you said, we have a very simple interface for Dynamo. So we have like the File tab menu, where you can create new workspaces or you can create new custom nodes. We will see this later in the course. You can open a new file. You have a list of recent files that you used, and you can save as, and you can export the workspace as an image. This is pretty nice because sometimes you want to send your workflow to someone else just to ask for help, or just to share your workflow with someone else, but you don't want to send him the Dynamo file, for example. And you can export your workspace as an image, as a workflow, and you can send this to everybody. And we don't care now about this model to STL, and of course the exit one. We have bunches of other options. Actually, Dynamo doesn't have too much options that are really important. One of the most important is this background 3D preview that allows you to see let's say a preview of what you are doing in Dynamo in the same background of Revit. We have something in the chat. Check your sound settings. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jose. If you can take care about this, you will help me a lot. So as I was saying, we have this background 3D preview, so we can kind of turn on and off the Revit background preview. My suggestion is to turn off this, because to keep on the Revit background preview will just use a lot of your video card memory, and is not really useful to see what is going on in Dynamo inside Revit. You already have your preview in Dynamo, and you can be pretty sure that is the same. So you will just see some kind of blue line, fake line inside Revit that you don't need actually. So I'm just suggesting you that you remove the Revit background preview. The second one important is the setting related to the geometry work range. So let's start a new one, otherwise we are not able to see it. So this is, in my opinion, the most important setting that you have to consider. So according to the kind of model or geometry that you are building in Dynamo, you can have kind of a range of numbers. So if you are building like a bolt or a nut in Dynamo, then you can use the small setting, because the accuracy of the numbers will be pretty high. So you can have a pretty high accuracy in the numbers that you are getting from addition or divisions or whatever you are using as calculation. So then if you have something bigger, let's say you can think about if you are thinking in millimeters, this is not this is still not enough, because you can go up to 10,000 units, and 10,000 units in millimeters is 10 meters. So it's still something a little bit small. You have to change your project unit into centimeters or probably meters if you want to use the medium. But you have still a pretty high accuracy. As you can see, you have the fourth number after, I mean, the float number after the first comma. If you want to use, if you are thinking about a building and you want to use millimeters or you want to use centimeters, you will probably change your geometry range calculation into large. And if you are dealing with a huge file like, let's say like landscape design, or you are building something that is really far from the center, when you use, for example, shared coordinates, you can have things very far from the center according to the geolocation of the element. Well, you will probably use extra large, but you have to think that you will lose all the digits after the comma, so all the floating digits, because this is really for something that shouldn't be that accurate like a bolt. Okay, so keep in mind that again, this one can be changed during the process, but most of the times I'm working with meters. I'm using the medium, and the other times I'm working with millimeters for buildings, for example, I'm using the large option. But you can use both of them. Most of the times you are working with mediums and large. Very few times I worked with small, probably never, just for very small details that I build in 3D. And just right now that I'm working with huge models for landscape design, I'm using extra large. So probably 90% of times you will use medium or large. So let's keep it as a medium for now. So perfect. The other information that you will use as a settings is where you store your package and your custom nodes. So probably not today, but after a while, you will start to build your own packages. So if you start to build your own workflows or your own custom nodes, and you want to share this with within the company, within your team, you will probably store these files into a network folder. So the best way to say to Dynamo, hey Dynamo, go and look into that folder, because probably there you will find packages or you will find nodes, is to set up these additional package paths. So as you can see, you can just point to a specific folder and say that into that folder you have something which is important for Dynamo. I have a couple of new folders here, and those are based on some internal package that I developed for a few companies. So saying that, we have done with for now with the settings. So again, keep in mind that it's important to know the geometry working range, and it's important to understand where you store your packages, and it is important to say that you don't need actually the available preview Revit background. This will save you a lot. Okay, so let's go here and let's close again this one. So from the main page again, before starting, you have again here new, you can open, and what I'm going to say now is how you can gather more information. So after this course, you will be able to use Dynamo for sure, but if you need more information, or if you forget something, because at the beginning it's quite easy to forget how to do things, you still have some really well prepared references. So you have the Getting Start, which is inside Dynamo. Very few things, but after this course, those won't be really interesting for you. One which is really interesting is the Dynamo Primer. The Dynamo Primer is pointing to a website prepared by the Dynamo team, where you have, based on the version, you have a very well prepared written documentation about different nodes, how is configured the workspace, how to get in start, the libraries, what are the main libraries. We will see all of them now, but again, if you need more information later after this course, you can go and check the Dynamo Primer. You have also different languages. Unfortunately, only, I don't know why, don't ask me why, the Deutsch, and for sure the Chinese, which is, I mean, it's quite different from the English. So we have only this kind of translation, but more or less the English version is perfect for everybody. So the good thing is that you can also download this as a PDF and you can print it. So you can keep it on your desk and just go there and check it whenever you want. There are few video tutorials on YouTube. These tutorials are not really updated. Well, they are still good because they are on the basics of Dynamo, but they are quite old now. So we will touch everything about this. Last but not least is the Dynamo Dictionary. So for me, the best references you have to keep is Dynamo Primer and Dynamo Dictionary, because the Dynamo Dictionary is just a list of all the Dynamo nodes. So of course the core nodes, not all the packages that you can download as third-party packages, but at least for the main nodes, you have a very good dictionary explanation of all the nodes. And the good thing is that most of the times you have also example files that you can use as a starting point for you. So the good thing is that also these three is exactly the same that you can see inside Dynamo. So just keep in mind that whenever you want, you have these two very important references. So let's go directly now into Dynamo, and let's start with a new Dynamo Workspace. So the Workspace it's pretty simple. It's based on a library on the left that you can use whenever you need. And as you can see, there is a search button. Once you start to use Dynamo frequently, you will know the exact name of the node, and then you can just start to write something here, and you will get a list of nodes using that word in the name. So for the beginning, don't be scared because I have some third-party package here. So most probably you won't find all these packages in your installation of Dynamo, but don't worry, those are third-party packages, and some of them are developed by the Roots, and some of them are part of my own company development. So whatever you see in the Dynamo dictionary library is what you get with the Dynamo, of course. If you are looking for some new package that you want to use into your day-by-day activities, then you have to start to look into the to the package repository. So you can go under the packages tab, and you can go under search for a package. And after a couple of seconds, this will synchronize with the main repository, which is exactly this one. Dynamo packages is this website. In this website, you have all the list of packages that you can download inside Dynamo. There is a huge community of people building packages for free. As you can see, we have more than 1,000 of packages available. I can say that probably only the 40% of them is worth it to download, because some of them are just people that are trying to build some package, or they are just starting to learn how to build package. So probably just the 40% of them are good packages. The most downloaded and installed are in this list. As you can see, probably Launchbox for Dynamo is one of the most installed, is the one of the most installed package, and is one of the most used package as well. The other one is archilab.net. All of them are really, really, really useful every day of your life. So I suggest you to download at least all of these packages. And of course, as a D-Roots, we have our own package. So we are starting to build a package. Right now, this package is working on 2018 of Revit, just because we are using some API functionality, which is only inside Revit 2018. And well, in a few days, we already have more than 500 downloads. We just published today the latest version of our package, which is always ongoing, which is always a work in progress. And we have some interesting nodes to QA, QC the model, and some interesting structural nodes. So to download the package, you just search for the package, and then you hit this button. And after a couple of seconds, this is saying that this package contains some Python code, so some external code. So don't worry for that. It's not a virus, so you can easily download it. You won't have any trouble for that. So it's downloading. Once it's downloaded, you will find this under your library. And starting from now, you have this package installed in your machine under the main installation path. And under this path, you have all your packages installed. And here is the roots. And especially for this one, we have just like new nodes released today. So some alerts, some information to gather information from the document, and so on. I don't want to focus now on this. We will probably use it later during the course. So starting from this, now your environment is ready to build your first workflow. So how to move inside the workspace, which is more or less made by two different workspaces. The first one is the workspace where you start, let's say, let's try to drag one node. So you have two different workspaces here, and fit to screen. So why is not coming? Come on. What's happening? New core color evaluate. Okay. So you have two workspaces. The first one is, like we can say, the view navigation. So is the one where you start and you build your workflow. The other one is the geometry workspace, where you can inspect your geometry in 3D. So you can move in both of them using, I mean, you can switch between them using these two buttons, or you can use a shortcut from the keyboard, which is Control B. So using Control B, you can switch between the two different workspaces. And then you can move inside these workspaces using your mouse, using the wheel button. you can just zoom in and zoom out in your workspace. The same if you are in the geometry workspace. So zoom in and zoom out. Then you can use the pen, just pushing the wheel button like you are doing in AutoCAD or like you are doing in Revit is exactly the same. And if you lose the location, you can just right click here and then ask to fit to screen. So you will just focus on the, let's say, it's just like a zoom extends all like you are doing in AutoCAD or within Revit. And exactly the same if you are in the geometry preview, you can just right click and say zoom to fit, and then this will be again like a zoom extends of the workspace. You can drag your nodes around the workspace, of course, just selecting and using the left button you can move the elements around. And if you push the delete button, of course you can delete the node that you placed in the screen. So you have the library, as I said, so you can open and close the library in the workspace. And you have also like a shortcut menu, which is using the right click button of the mouse, you open like a new menu inside the workspace. It depends on where you are clicking the button. And then you can use the same search that you have in the search library toolbar. So it's up to you. If you know exactly the name of the node, you can start to write here, and the list that will be provided to you will be exactly the same that you have right here. So it's exactly the same node, but it's easier to have more space for you and then just start to build. So saying that, we have the last information that I have to give you before starting our first node and just start to understand how nodes will work in Dynamo. It's this information about how the workflow is run in Dynamo. So we have basically 3 types of execution. So you have the automatic execution. That means that you don't have to run your script. The script is always running, and every time you make a change in the workspace, you have the change applied to the workspace. This is pretty common when you are working with simple things or you are working with small scripts. But if you are working with huge scripts, and if you are dealing with Revit, so with things, with elements in Revit, you don't want to crash Dynamo every time. So I suggest you to use the manual one and then make your changes. And once you are confident that you can run your script, then you can just run your script. There are few others nodes right now. We are not focused on this kind of nodes that can be executed periodically. That means that this node is executed automatically, but every kind of 1 second or 10 milliseconds or 10 seconds. It depends on how often you want to execute. So it's executed automatically, but not real time. Just every time there is a time lapse. After this time lapse, you have your execution. And this is pretty used, especially when you use like packages for form finding, like you have Kangaroo in Grasshopper, you have Dynashape in Dynamo. So are pretty interesting packages for geometry form finding, and these kind of packages are executed periodically, so not automatic but periodically, and you can set this time lapse. So right now we want to use automatic way because I'm pretty confident that I will not crash Dynamo right now. And let's start with the really first node in our script. So it's under geometry and it's under point and it's under points by coordinates. So whatever is under the geometry library, it's a 2D or 3D element of Dynamo, is not a Revit element. It's just a Dynamo element. So you can use the geometry library without any problem, even if you are using Dynamo Sandbox. Okay, so we don't need Revit opened and Dynamo open to use the geometry library. We can use it with Dynamo Sandbox. Right now I'm using this one, so it's okay. I don't want to close it now. So the first one is the, I'm just using the by coordinates point. And as you can see, because I'm using the automatic way of executing my script, I already have something in my both 2D workspace, let's say graph view workspace, and 3D background workspace. So I can use Control B and I can zoom and I can rotate, orbit using the right button of the mouse, and keep pushing the right button. I can orbit around this element. So it's just a point, is nothing, but is the most simple element that you can build in Dynamo, because we will see during the course, we will try to put together this element. So the easiest element is a point. Then if you put together more points, you have a curve, which is just, as I said, is a collection of points, is an infinite, actually is an infinite collection of points in the 3D space. And if you put together more curves, you can have a surface. And actually a surface is an infinite collection of curves, which is an infinite collection of points. And if you put together more surfaces, you have a solid, or you have a mesh, which is actually an infinite collection of surfaces, infinite collection of curves, and infinite collection of points. So if you keep in your mind that this is the action that you have to use and you have to follow to reach the 3D geometry, then you know how to decompose a 3D element into simple elements. And that's the idea behind a node workspace. So you have to start from small things, you put together small bricks to build a wall. So don't start to think that you can start from the wall. You have to break down your problem into smallest problem, and then you can go from the top down, breaking your element into simple elements. And that's the reason why it's so easy to use a node workflows. So let's start now from the easiest part. Let's say we want a point, and this point is actually a point in the 0, 0, 0 position. Why? Because we already have some default value for our inputs. So all the nodes in Dynamo are pretty the same. They can have a name, which is exactly what you can see here on the top. they have a list of inputs on the right side, and they are always on the right side, excuse me, on the left side, and they are always on the left side, then you have kind of black box here in the middle, which is executing whatever you need to have what you can find on the right side where there are outputs. So we can have multiple inputs and multiple outputs. In this case, we only have one output, which is the point. So all of them already have some default value like 0, 0, 0. But what if I want to move this point? So I need to use some number. And as I said from the beginning, if I'm using a project with millimeters, I have to think that if I want to move this point 2 meters, I have to use a 2000 value. So let's say we want to move it right now, just pretty close to this element. Let's say we want to use 1 meter. We have two ways to do it, and we always have two ways at least to do the same thing in Dynamo. So let's see another important node, which are the slider. So let's call slider from here, and this is another way to find in the library where things are. So as you can see, number slider and integer slider are under the input library. So I can click on the inputs, and I can see that core input, I have all the kind of inputs that I can use in Dynamo. So I have two types of slider, and slider is basically something that you can use to manage like a volume, it's just like something that you can slide to have a higher number or a smaller number. And you have two types of this. You have number slider and integer slider. The difference is that integer slider, they can only have integer steps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, or every 2, for example. So 0, 2, 4, and so on. So you have a minimum value, a maximum value, and a step value for this. The number slider, you can have float numbers. So you can, for example, have an increment of 0.001 between the numbers. So as much as you put numbers here, you have more accurate numbers and more accurate sliders. We don't need now that kind of accuracy. We can just use the integer number, and we can start to connect nodes to do something. So we have a very small entity, which is the point, and we have another entity, which is a number. So we can connect things together, and this is the way we are creating workflows. So think always that the flow is going from left to right, inputs and outputs, and inside you have a black box. So if I want the input for my point, I can place something before my point, because the flow will always go from left to right. So let's connect the X value right here. You can see that nothing changed actually, because I still have 0 here, and 0 was also the default value. But as soon as I'm starting to move this value, the point is moving in the workspace, and is moving with steps of 2. And you can see it from the grid lines here that I'm moving always 2 every time I'm changing the value of the slider. I can still go back to 1, and then I will move every 1. or I can use a number slider with a higher accuracy. Let's keep it as it is. So let's remove this, and we can connect now this element to this and see how the element is flowing a little bit more fluid. So as much as I'm placing accuracy here, the element is flowing and is sliding in a much more fluid way. So let's keep it 5 now. I'm not taking care now about the project units because I'm not dealing directly with the Revit elements. So I just want to keep it a little bit smaller. So 0.1 is okay. The good thing in node-based workspaces is that you can connect the same input to multiple outputs. So in this way, for example, I will have the points moving exactly in a direction which is going in this 45 angle direction between the y-axis, which is exactly this green one. Probably you can see easy the green color, and the x-axis, which is this red one, and the z-axis, which is going up in the workspace. So if I'm moving these elements in this direction, you can see that is exactly following the 45 degrees direction. And again, if I'm trying to connect again the same to the Z value, well, then we'll go into these 45 and 45 direction in 3D, exactly in this way. If I want to move in a separate direction, then I can disconnect from these two inputs, my slider, and to do that, I can just click on the input and then remove the connection. And I can use a copy, Control-C, and paste, Control-V, to create new sliders. So I can, for example, maintain this element as a separate element. So I can move in the X direction, I can move in the Y direction, and then I can move in the Z direction, my point. So as I said, the point is the easiest part, is the smallest part in a geometry. Let's say we want to create a new point. So we can Control-C, Control-V, copy paste the same node, and Dynamo will keep the same connection between these two elements and the same inputs, which doesn't make too much sense now, of course, because if I'm going to move this, yeah, of course I have 2 points, but they are one on top of each other. So let's disconnect these 2 points, and then right now we have exactly 2 points in the workspace. So I want just to close the first session showing you what is the next step. So how we can create a curve, the simplest curve in Dynamo, which is a line between 2 points. So the line between 2 points is exactly what you have to look for into the library, which is line by start and point. Again, the flow is always going from left to right. So those are my first inputs to my points, and then those 2 points will be the inputs for my start and point node. Remember, if you go with the pointer on top of the input, you will understand also the type, the kind of input which this node is expecting as an input. So if you go to the X, you can see that the X value is waiting for a double number, actually a number that can be an integer number or can be just a real number. And as an output, we have a point. And look at this, the line is waiting for a point. So we can connect this point to this point. Of course, we can connect the same point to the same point, but then we will receive an error because we cannot create a line. The 2 points are likely coincident. So if you receive a yellow color in your node, this is a warning, is not a real error. This can be probably executed as well. At this time, it is not executed because we can't see any kind of line, but is not blocking your workflow. Sometimes you have just warnings, sometimes you have errors with the yellow color. Many times you have, if you have something like red color, like in this way, for example, I'm just trying to find a way to make it red. That means that you have an error that cannot be, I mean, you have to solve this issue before going, otherwise you won't be able to run your script. So let's see now that we want to connect these two, and the result is exactly a line. So this line is moving around, so I can change my points, location, and this line will always connect these two. And as you can imagine, if I'm doing this copy and paste here, just trying to connect these two, and I move this one, then the line will move around in the world. So you can go to 0, 0, 0 again, or you can just try to move this line. I know it's quite simple right now, but I can say to you that if you start from the real beginning, understanding the basics of geometries and the basics behind the node, I mean the node idea, the node workflow, then you will be able to build really complex workflows. Just with basics bricks, you can build really complex worlds. So saying that, I'm just closing now. Again, I really apologize for the first session, but I hope we will be able to manage a very good course together. So please, just start to have a look to Dynamo, just start to play around with Dynamo with these simple nodes, just to understand how to start your really first workflows. If you have any question about this first session, please send me an email. My email is name.surname@droots.com, and I will be very happy to help you to start to build your own workflows in Dynamo. So thank you for now, and see you next week.